Hello students, my name is Miss Maya, and today we're going to be going over the meaning of the book, The Undefeated, by Kwami Alexander, that you read with Miss Desiree. So first, I want you to take a couple minutes, get a pencil and paper, and if you have the book with you, get that with you too, and write down a couple things on your pen and paper with a couple things that you didn't know in the story or something that stood out to you, some questions that you may have, or what the story really meant. So I want you to give your explanation of it, and then we can see if your predictions are going to come true throughout the book. Next, after you do that, we're going to go over the story as a whole. I'm going to be reading the book to you quickly, not very fast, and then we're going to go over a brief summary of what the actual book was about. So here it is, The Undefeated by Kwami Alexander. This is for the unforgettable, the swift and sweet ones who hurdled history and opened a world of possible. The ones who survived America by any means necessary. And the ones who didn't. This is for the undeniable, the ones who scored with chains on their hand and faith in the other. This is for the unflappable, the sophisticated ones who box adversity and tackle vision. Who shine their light for the world to see and don't stop till the break of dawn. This is for the unafraid, the audacious ones who carried red, white, and weary blues on the battlefield to save an imperfect union. The righteous marching ones who sang, "We shall not be moved," because Black lives matter. This is for the unspeakable. This is for the unspeakable. This is for the unspeakable. This is for the unlimited, unstoppable ones, the dreamers and the doers who swim across the big sea of our imagination and show us the majestic shores of the prisoned land. The Wilma Rudolphs, the Muhammad Alis, the Athleta Gibson, the Jesse Owens, the Jordan and the LeBrons, the Serenas and the Cheryls, the Reese Whitleys, and the undiscovered. This is for the unbelievable, the we real cool ones. This is for the unbending, the black as the night, these beautiful ones. This is for the underdogs and the uncertain, the unspoken, though no longer untitled. This is for the undefeated. This is for you, and you, and you. This is for us. So that is just what the book is. We went over it with Miss Desiree. She explained more in detail and got some questions to really think about what you thought the book might be. So really the brief summary of the book is that the author, Kwami Alexander, wrote this book, was actually a poem, wrote this story for us, for his daughter, to show where and how we got to where we are in history today. And he really wanted just to make this known for his daughter so she's able to understand how we got to this point in history. The book for a second time, I want you to write down a couple of things again that really stood out to you this time. Maybe it could have been some of the pages, the words, some of the sentences that the author used. You saw that how the author repeated a couple of words multiple times to really make an impact on the audience. Maybe those are some things that you want to write about. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes to write about that. After you do that, we're going to go back onto a couple of pages and talk about them. Talk about the meaning, the images, and the text behind what the author and the illustrator were really trying to portray. So first, we're going to look at pages 5 and 6. This is the one. If you have the book, it's the blank pages. You see the words and the ones who didn't. So what the author is trying to say, this is the one, the people who didn't survive. They no longer have a voice in our society and our history anymore. These are the ones who didn't survive. And we see that the author uses this blank space to show us that these people are no longer with us. So I want you to write down what type of impact this has on you. I know it may be kind of uncomfortable, kind of sad, but I just want you to understand that this is what this page is trying to say to us. Next, we're going to be looking at pages 11 and 12. You see that the use of the colors is really trying to show an emotion that the author is trying to portray. We see the use of the dark, vivid, and bold colors that are trying to express this type of like bold emotion, like kind of happy but not happy at the same time. We see that the text says, "Who shine their light for the world to see, and don't stop till the break of dawn," showing that these are the people who are advocating for the rights of the African American people. Can you write down a time when you saw or experienced other people sticking up for people of the African American community? Next, we're going to be looking at pages 13 and 14, right next to the other one that we just looked at. What do you see in this page? How do you feel when you see this page? What are the colors and the images are trying to express to us? Dark tones, not very bright, not very exciting. What is that trying to tell us? Write down a couple of things that you think, that emotions that the author and illustrator is trying to portray to us. So we see that this says, "This is for the unafraid, the audacious ones who carry the red, white, and weary blue on the battlefield to save an imperfect union." This is showing how the African American people are fighting for our country in order for us to be here today. And without them, who knows what our world would be like. But yet, even though they help serve in our country, they are still left untreated, unfairly treated in our world today. Next, we're going to be looking at pages 17 and 18. We see that the author made the page cover in the whole image. What do you think the author was trying to say to us? How do you think the author was trying to make us feel? How come the author only used one line to express this whole page? The page says, "This is for the unspeakable." Again, this is for the people who did not survive and are no longer here with us today. Pictured here are the bodies of the African American people who are no longer with us, the thousands and dozens of African Americans who were in our country that are no longer able to speak. Next, we're going to look at pages 25 and 26. We see that the use of the emotions and the colors here in this book are really trying to show a story and an action about what the text is saying. So here we see that the text says, "The Wilma Rudolphs, the Muhammad Alis, the Athleta Gibbons, the Jesse Owens, the Jordans and the LeBrons, the Serenas and the Cheryls, the Reese Whitleys, and the Undiscovered." Pictured here, we can see that the text and the images correspond with each other, showing that these are the people that are mentioned in the text. These are the people that are making a difference in the African American community and in our world today, showing that they are an important part of our country and our world. Lastly, we're going to be looking at pages 29 through 30. We see again almost a blank canvas that the author and illustrator are trying to show to us, with the slight uses of the images on the bottom of the page and the minimal use of the text. What do you see here? What do you think the author is trying to tell us? What meaning do you think is trying to be portrayed here? The text says, "This is for the underdogs and the uncertain, the unspoken, but no longer untitled." What do you think these birds mean? Do you think the type of bird has to do with what the author is trying to tell us? Personally, I see a crane, which is a type of bird which is showing a symbol of hope and change in the world, showing that we hope that one day all African American people in our country will be treated equally, like they're supposed to be. After reading the book and looking at some of the pages that are highlighting on these different things, I know that it is a difficult and powerful subject to talk about. The author really highlights on what the African American community, how they are treated, and how they were in our world today. Lastly, I want to read with you the author's note on page 33. I started writing this poem in 2008. This is the year my second daughter, Samaya, was born. And 3 months later, Barack Obama became the first African American president of the United States. This poem was my tribute to both. I want to establish from the very beginning that much of what I'm talking about in this poem, so much of American history has been forgotten, left out of the books that truly know who we are as a country. We have to accept and embrace all of our woes and wonders. I wrote a poem because I want my daughters to know how we got to the historic moment where, as the famous Malia Jackson spiritual says, "You know my soul, look back and wonder how did I make it over." I wrote a poem about Black Olympians such as Jesse Owens and Wilma Rudolph, undermining the false narrative of white superiority by racing to gold in front of the whole world, about Malcolm X urging Blacks to fight for freedom, justice, and equality no matter the method or the cost, about enslaved Africans pushing on the unwavering fighting spirit of hope and faith that one day we will be free, or that our children or their children's would become masters of their own destinies, about Langston Hughes and Zora Neale Hurston and the Harlem Renaissance, about cultural expression and liberation and the Black arts movement, about Dr. King's acceptance speech for the 1964 Nobel Peace Prize, about a promised land, about racial injustice, poverty, and war, about civil rights marchers chanting, "We shall overcome," and demonstrating across the South, about Jack Johnson and Muhammad Ali boxing racial prejudice in and out of the ring, about Black civil soldiers saving a union that refused to see them as equals, about Black Lives Matter, about Black Lives Matter, about Black Lives Matter, because we are Americans, because we are human beings. But mostly, I wrote a poem to remind Maya and her friends and her family and all of you, and remind myself to never ever give up, because as Maya Angelou wrote, we may encounter many defeats, but we must not be defeated. It may even be necessary to encounter the defeat so that we can know who we are, so that we can see, oh, that happened, and I rose. I did get knocked down flat in front of the whole world, and I rose. Keep rising. You can see that in this author note, the author repeatedly says, Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. He said about 3 or 4 times, showing what an impact that statement has in our world today. I hope you guys really enjoyed this story. I know I personally did. It was a really great poem and it was really powerful and impactful. Thank you.